excited about this. We are going to make a stencil. And I want to say right off the bat, this is not about perfection. And I want you to please be open to like really whimsical, bizarre, non-perfect stencils that are going to really up your game in your book of soul, because it's going to present the unplanned to you to work with. So right off the bat, strike perfection right off of your plate, because we're not going to hold space for perfection. We're holding space for expression and artistry. So we are going to use this product. This is what I've chosen. As I've said in the materials video, there is so much to choose from out there. So you don't necessarily have to have exactly this, but I would make sure you have something that is made for stencil, for cutting your own stencils. So this has a few sheets. I'm just going to pick one. It's this really wonderful, thick, vellum-y kind of material. And it's see-through, which is awesome. So you can put it right on top of your source image. Now, I've chosen this image not only because it has special meaning to me, but because it's very graphically strong. It has a lot of space and a lot of room to move your knife around, and it has a lot of soul, in it already. This is a very soulful image, and so we don't have to get super crazy with a highly detailed image, which here's a contrasting image to show you. It would be a really amazing stencil, right? To have all of these amazing trees, bare branches going up into the sky, but look how intricate and detailed it would be with a tiny little knife to go in and cut each thing. I mean, you'd make a billion mistakes, which is fine. But in the end, I feel something like this is going to be more frustrating, whereas a portrait, something that has more space in it for expression, is going to be your better option. That said, it does not have to be a portrait. You can go even simpler than that. You could choose to make a whole stencil sheet by taking really stark and simple imagery, such as this black snake, and putting that here. You could put this loop-de-loop thing toward the bottom of it here. You could add this shape of like it's 3 circles, right, interlocked. You could do something like that. These shapes here you could do. I mean, you can do anything, you guys. It doesn't have to be as intricate as a portrait. You could even do something like this, just the outline, if you wanted to go just super simple, which you may want to do for your first try. I am just ambitious, and I am going to work on this beautiful woman's portrait. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that you have your paper and your stencil taped together so that you're not going to be having to worry about moving the page around. So I'm going to just flip this over and put her right in the center. And then I'm just gonna lock it down with some tape on all 4 corners. And I'm using masking tape because it's what was right next to me. Scotch tape would be just fine. And you also want to make sure that you have a knife that's sharp. I have spare blades just in case, and I'm going to use a Sharpie to draw out the shapes here. So with something like this, we're dealing with positive and negative shapes and spaces, right? So we have to think about, when we lay the stencil down and brush our paint over the top of it, what do we want to become the painted area versus the negative space that is left behind from the stencil being placed down. So immediately what I see is this very large area here, which is her skin. Do I want that to become the color of my paint, or do I want that to stay the color of the paper from when I lay my stencil down? And my immediate thought is that I want her skin to become the color of the paint. So for example, let's say I have a black piece of paper and bright green paint. When I lay this stencil down on the black paper, this whole area where her skin is going to become green paint. Does that make sense? And then I have to cut around each of the shapes here to ensure that I leave enough information behind that the eye is suggested, the nose is suggested, and the lip is suggested. So it's a bit of a tricky way to think, but again, stay open to making mistakes that are really going to just leave more possibility for creative, quote unquote, correction of your mistake. You know, for example, if I accidentally didn't leave space behind for her nose, I can do that with my paint and my inks and my stitching or whatever, right? So it's not the end of the world if this stencil isn't done perfectly. In fact, it's going to be way more interesting if it isn't. So the first thing I want to do is just grab my exterior shape here. And I'm, as usual, this is the way I roll when I create, I am going to try to switch off my brain, and I am going to try to let my self move with the shapes and the possibilities. So I am doubling up this line here because I want to leave a strip of stencil behind. I don't want to cut here because I want to leave the suggestion of her chin. So what this is going to be is an open space of skin, an open space of skin, and then this stencil needs to stay behind so that there's a strip between the two to continue the suggestion of the neck and breaking up the neck from the face. And I'm going to do the same thing around her eyes. It's going to take a very steady hand to ensure that I don't cut in places where it's very thin. So as I'm drawing, I'm having to look at this kind of backwards. It's a little bit tricky, you guys, for sure. And I am positive that I'm going to have some surprises here for myself that I wasn't expecting because I didn't, you know, think it through, quote unquote, correctly. So I'm already bracing for that. And you know what? If I have to do it again, then I'm good. I'm cool with that. So now what happens if we cut all of this shape out here, right? The first shape that one of the first shapes that I drew. We're gonna lift the whole face out and then she's not gonna have any features, right? So we have a choice to make. We either say, forget it, I'm gonna leave behind this amazing expansive skin here and only cut out the lips, this nose shape here, and these smaller shapes, and then cut out suggested, you know, tendrils of hair around, right? Which is kind of the logical step. Or we could go in and we could make all of this connect somehow to the main foundation of the hair, so that when we cut around it and cut it all out, we're able to lift off this massive bit of face and leave behind these small suggestions. The next thing to think about from there is, how is it going to be if we have all of this gone and just these little bits left behind? These tiny thin bits of stencil that would be left behind, if we're brushing paint over them, they're gonna lift and flip, right? So even though I would really like to have her skin lifted out, I have to stop and think, well, I can't lift her skin out. I might have some pretty crazy results. So, and crazy results, not in the fun, whimsical accident way, just more in like, I can't even use this stencil way. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to try to connect as much as I can. And I'm also going to create more to lift out. That's going to continue this suggestion of hair moving across her shoulders. I hope this is making sense, you guys. It's a kind of a complicated way to think. But I want you to see all of the options and all of the possibilities here. So I could, you know, draw lines and connect all, like her eyes up into her eyebrows, so that when I cut it all intricately, I can peel it all off and leave those behind. But I think I'm going to do it the other way, which is to cut these smaller bits out. And so what you can do as well is use a different marker to mark the areas that you don't want to cut. So for me, I definitely want to cut these smaller strips out. So I'm not going to colorize those, but I can do something like, let me finish drawing this out actually first. So I'm not going to be cutting out any of this here. So I just want to mark it to myself so that I don't get like in an X-Acto knife trance and start cutting these lines. Right, so I know just to leave that for now. Even if I'm unclear about my direction I'm gonna take, I know just don't even touch that for now. What I can do, I'm going to take this off now because I'm going to start cutting. What I can do is start cutting around her eyes. Now you may want to tape your stencil back down onto your cutting board, but I'm not going to. And you want to make sure you're pressing really hard too. This is why I said choose an image with, you know, strong graphics. And I want to show you what's going to happen if I just randomly start cutting without thinking through. What have I just done? I have just taken out her whole eye, right? So what happens if I go in and I cut around the smallest details first? A pair of tweezers might come in handy here as well. This is very like slow and steady, and be super patient work. Don't drink 10 cups of coffee before you start, because you will lose your mind. And definitely give up any ideas of perfection. It's kind of what I love about mixed media work, is it just leaves so much room for pleasant mishaps. Okay, so do you see the difference? Right? You have to start with the smallest details first and then work out. Now with this outer eye shape, I'm gonna have to go in and like do it really finely. But not all the way around, because then I'm going to just lift the whole eye again, right? We don't want to lift this whole eye out. We want to maintain some shape, some small detail. So, hope you can see that okay. You see the difference? Got just this tiny bit of shape there going on. And then we've got no eye, because I went for the biggest shape first instead of focusing on the smallest shape. There's really no way to correct that. That's a done deal now. And then we're going to go in now to this big shape here to outline her nose. And if you see something, like as you're cutting and figuring this out, if you see that you drew something that you don't want to cut, just take your Sharpie and your different colored Sharpie and mark it so you don't go into it. Or, you know, pick up the black Sharpie and make a new mark that you do want to cut. Or just freestyle it. There's something to be said for putting down your first lines with your Sharpie, but then as you trust yourself and learn the process, you can just freestyle. Could be really pleasing too, I think. I'm pressing pretty hard, using all my muscles. Now I don't want her eyebrow to be this thick anymore, so I'm gonna scoot in a little more outside of where her, inside I should say, of where I originally drew her brow. I kind of want to bring it in a little more. So you can start to see where it's going to, what it's going to look like and where all the paint is going to go when you lay it down. Okay, Now we need to suggest like a tiny strip under her eye to give that under eye definition. Otherwise her eye's gonna be like floating in space. It's gonna look a little strange. So again, I'm gonna go super hard and firm, but also fine and thin. So if you've ever done like stamp carving, this is so similar, right? It's just a different material that we're using. Okay. I am liking this. So next come her lips, which are going to be pretty easy, all things considered. So now what you can do is you can see more clearly, like it's becoming really obvious what is happening here, and you can take it that much further. So I'm gonna want to have this neck definition here. Okay, and now really all that's left is anything that I want to input into her face area, like if I wanted to suggest cheekbones or some kind of curvature here, could do that. The more lines you create in a face, the more age you're going to create, right? So if I suddenly decided I wanted her to be an older woman, that would be a way to go. You can see how much I've aged her already with just this one curvature. It's crazy, right? The thicker the line too, the more of the suggestion you'll have. And so now it's the outer part of her hair. So you'll really start to get a sense of where your lines are going and need to go, and it may change up a lot after you draw up your stencil. So be open to that, you guys. Be open to changing things a little bit. It doesn't need to be exactly perfect. Remember that, because you want to leave room for creative interpretation. So I feel like that's good enough for now. I am going to set this aside and pull her out a little bit later when I am working on my book. I have finished cutting out my stencil sheet and I'm pretty excited about these. I can't wait to play with them, and I just wanted to show you quickly the E here. I cut it all the way out. It can be really hard to think backwards, as you will see when you do this. And I cut the E all the way out on accident instead of leaving notches of the paper to anchor it into place. So I just grabbed some masking tape. And you can see that I almost did the same thing here, just completely cut the skull out, which would leave us that shape, which is kind of nondescript, right? It's not going to really do much when we use it. So I left a notch down here, keeping it attached to the sheet, as you can see. And I could also just grab some masking tape if I wanted to and place it up here and hold it into place. If you're using something really wet, it's obviously going to possibly lift the masking tape, but it's not the end of the world. The point of this is to have a fun impression to start with, but then run with it and make it your own. This is not going to be your be-all end-all image. I also grabbed some letters from my collage sheet. As you can see here, it's the same letters, the S and the O, etc. So have fun with your collage sheet. It's another really great option for grabbing your images for your stencils. So now I have some really fun ones to play with, and I still have my amazing looking woman from the beginning of the video. And I want to show you two quickly. If you wanted to delete or erase all of your lines that you've drawn, I believe if we hit this with acetone, which I have here in the bottle, straight acetone, and scrub around all of your lines, it just completely removes it. Pretty cool, right? So then all you have is the impression that you've cut out. So you can do that as well. It just keeps it a little more clean. Pretty cool. I'm excited to play with her. I can't wait. So over here to the side of my work table, I have a whole pile of stencils cut out and ready to go, waiting for me to play with them. Some of these I did on camera, some I did off. There's a lot for me to choose from, and I'm pretty excited to work with them to see where they take me.